is nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to figure out. For the next little while, you can simply rest. Allow your body to settle into whatever position feels most comfortable. Feel the surface beneath you supporting your weight completely. There is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, nothing expected of you. The day is over now. Whatever happened today belongs to today. Whatever remains unfinished can wait quietly until tomorrow. And for this moment, you are safe. Take a slow breath in and gently let it go. Another slow breath and release. Feel your shoulders soften. Feel the muscles around your eyes becoming loose. Feel your jaw relaxing. The thoughts that have been following you throughout the day do not need to disappear. You do not need to force your mind to become silent. Instead, imagine that every thought is simply a cloud drifting across a vast evening sky. Some clouds are large, some are small, some move quickly, others move slowly, but none of them need your attention. You can simply watch them pass, far away, beyond the noise of the world, beyond deadlines, worries, and endless responsibilities. There stood a quiet valley, hidden between ancient mountains. The valley was known by very few people. It did not appear on maps. Travelers rarely found it. And those who did often felt an immediate sense of peace they could not explain. At the center of the valley stood a small temple made of weathered wood and stone. The temple was simple. No grand decorations, no golden statues, no impressive gates, only silence, only stillness, only the gentle sound of wind moving through pine trees. The monks who lived there followed a simple way of life. They woke with the sunrise, worked with their hands, shared meals together, and spent long hours sitting quietly, listening to the world around them. Among these monks was a young man named Taro. Taro was kind, hard-working, thoughtful, but he carried a burden that nobody else could see. His mind never seemed to rest. While other monks sat peacefully beneath the trees, Taro found himself trapped inside endless streams of thought. What if I make a mistake? What if I disappoint my teacher? What if I never become wise? What if I am wasting my life? The questions came during breakfast, during work, during meditation, and most of all, at night, when darkness settled over the valley and every other monk drifted peacefully to sleep. Taro often remained awake. He would lie in bed, staring into the darkness, replaying conversations, imagining problems, creating worries that did not yet exist. Night after night, week after week, month after month, the exhaustion slowly grew. One evening, after another sleepless night, Taro climbed a narrow path leading toward the highest part of the valley. At the top of the hill sat an old cedar tree. Beneath the tree lived the oldest monk in the temple. His name was Master Ren. Many believed Master Ren possessed extraordinary wisdom, yet he spent most of his days quietly tending a small garden. As Taro approached, he found the old monk watering flowers. Neither spoke immediately. The morning air was cool. Birds sang softly in the distance. Finally, Taro bowed respectfully. "Master," he said, "I cannot quiet my mind." Master Ren continued watering the flowers. After a long pause, he asked, "Why would you want to?" Taro blinked in confusion. "Because my thoughts make me suffer." The old monk nodded gently. "And what happens when you fight them?" Taro thought for a moment. "They become stronger." Master Ren smiled. "Exactly. The old monk set down the watering can and motioned toward a nearby stream. Together, they walked through the garden until they reached a narrow flow of water moving peacefully between smooth stones. Master Ren pointed toward the stream. "Tell me what you see." "Water," Taro replied. "What happens if you try to stop it?" Taro looked at the flowing stream. "It would resist, and if you build a wall, the water would push against it." Master Ren nodded. "And if the wall is strong enough, the water would gather. Then what? Eventually it may overflow." The old monk smiled again. "Thoughts are very similar." The young monk remained silent. Master Ren continued. "You spend your days building walls against your own mind. You try to stop every thought. You argue with every fear. You wrestle every worry. And in doing so, you give them strength." A gentle breeze moved through the trees. The sound of flowing water filled the silence between them. Taro listened carefully. For the first time in many months, he was not trying to find an answer. He was simply listening. Master Ren picked up a fallen leaf. The leaf drifted onto the stream. Without resistance, it floated away. "Be like the leaf," the old monk said softly, "not the wall." Taro watched as the leaf disappeared around a bend in the stream. Something inside him relaxed, only slightly, but enough to notice, enough to feel. The old monk sat beside the water. Taro joined him. Together they watched the stream continue its endless journey through the valley, neither trying to control it, neither trying to stop it, only allowing it to flow. And for the first time in a very long while, Taro experienced a small moment of peace, not because his thoughts disappeared, but because he stopped fighting them. Above them, clouds drifted lazily across the morning sky. The mountains stood unmoving. The stream flowed steadily onward, and somewhere deep within the quiet valley, a new understanding had begun to grow. As the days passed, Taro continued visiting the stream each morning. He did not go there seeking answers. He did not go there hoping to become enlightened. Instead, he simply sat and watched. The water flowed exactly as it always had. The wind moved through the trees. Birds came and went. Clouds drifted across the sky. Everything seemed to exist without effort, without struggle, without worry. Yet Taro still noticed something inside himself. The thoughts remained. Sometimes they arrived quietly. Sometimes they arrived like storms. Questions about the future, memories from the past, concerns about mistakes he had made, worries about mistakes he might make someday. And each time they appeared, he remembered the leaf floating on the stream. He would take a slow breath and imagine placing each thought gently onto the water, not pushing it away, not holding on to it, simply allowing it to float downstream. Some thoughts disappeared quickly, others returned again and again. But little by little, the habit of fighting began to weaken. One evening, as golden light faded behind the mountains, Taro found Master Ren sitting outside the temple. The old monk held a small lantern in his hands. Its warm glow flickered softly in the gathering darkness. Taro bowed and sat beside him. For several minutes, neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable, like sitting beside an old friend. Finally, Master Ren lifted the lantern slightly. "Taro," he said, "if you were walking through a thick fog at night, how far would this lantern allow you to see?" Taro looked at the gentle light. "Perhaps a few steps." The old monk nodded. Only a few steps. Taro waited. He had learned that Master Ren rarely spoke without purpose. The old monk continued. Many people believe they need to see the entire path before they can move forward. The lantern glowed softly between them. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want to know exactly what will happen next week, next month, next year. The old monk smiled gently. But life has never worked that way. A cool breeze stirred the evening air. The lantern only shows a few steps, and yet, if you keep walking, those few steps are enough. Taro stared quietly at the light. Something about those words touched a place deep within him. Because much of his suffering came from trying to see too far ahead, trying to predict every possible problem, trying to prepare for every possible outcome, trying to control a future that had not yet arrived. Master Ren continued. When you lie awake at night, worrying about tomorrow, you are asking the lantern to illuminate an entire mountain. The old monk laughed softly. And the poor lantern cannot do such a thing. Taro smiled. For perhaps the first time in many months, he smiled without effort. The old monk placed the lantern beside him. Trust the next step, then trust the step after that. The path reveals itself as you walk. The sky slowly darkened. Stars appeared, one by one, above the valley, and Taro sat quietly, with the lantern's glow reflecting in his eyes. That night, as he lay in bed, the familiar thoughts returned. What if something goes wrong tomorrow? What if I fail? What if everything changes? But instead of following the thoughts into endless loops of worry, he imagined the small lantern, its gentle light, its limited reach, its simple wisdom. You do not need to see the entire path, only the next step. The thought settled softly inside him, like a blanket, like a whisper, like a friend speaking gently in the dark. Outside, the wind moved quietly through the pine trees. The temple rested peacefully beneath the stars. And for the first time in a long while, Taro drifted into sleep before midnight. Not perfect sleep, not uninterrupted sleep, but sleep nonetheless. A beginning, a small victory. The following morning, the valley awoke beneath a blanket of silver mist. The mountains appeared distant and dreamlike, as though they belonged to another world. Taro walked slowly through the gardens. The cool morning air touched his skin. Each breath felt fresh. Each step felt lighter. Not because all his worries were gone, but because they no longer felt like enemies. Over the following weeks, he began noticing something remarkable. The more he accepted uncertainty, the less afraid of it he became. The more he allowed thoughts to come and go, the less power they seemed to hold. The more he stopped trying to control life, the more peaceful life became. One afternoon, while sweeping fallen leaves near the temple entrance, Taro noticed a young traveler approaching from the mountain road. The traveler looked exhausted. His clothes were dusty. His shoulders were tense. His eyes carried the unmistakable expression of someone burdened by invisible worries. The traveler bowed respectfully. "May I rest here for the night?" "Of course," Taro replied warmly. Later that evening, they shared a simple meal together. Rice, vegetables, tea. As they ate, the traveler finally spoke. "I cannot stop thinking." Taro nearly laughed, not because the statement was amusing, but because it felt so familiar. The traveler continued, "My mind is constantly racing. I worry about money. I worry about my family. I worry about the future. I worry that something terrible may happen." The young man lowered his gaze. I don't know how to stop. For a moment, Taro saw his former self sitting across the table. The same fear, the same exhaustion, the same endless search for certainty. Taro remained quiet. Then he remembered the stream, the leaf, the lantern, and the lessons that had slowly begun changing his life. Outside, night settled gently across the valley. The stars emerged once again. The wind whispered through the trees, and somewhere beyond the temple walls, the stream continued flowing exactly as it always had, never rushing, never resisting, simply moving forward, moment by moment, step by step, just as life was meant to be lived. The traveler remained at the temple for several days. No one asked where he had come from. No one asked where he was going. At the temple, people were allowed to arrive exactly as they were. Tired, confused, peaceful, anxious. It did not matter. The valley welcomed everyone with the same quiet kindness. Each morning, the traveler joined the monks for tea. Each afternoon, he helped in the gardens. And each evening, he sat beside Taro beneath the old cedar tree. Though they spent many hours together, they often spoke very little. There was something comforting about shared silence. No expectations, no need to impress anyone, no need to explain yourself. Only the simple experience of being present. One cool evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of deep blue and violet, the traveler finally asked a question. Taro, how did you become so calm? The young monk smiled softly. A year earlier, he would have laughed at such a question, because he had once believed himself to be the most anxious person in the valley. But now he understood something important. Peace was not the absence of thoughts. Peace was learning not to follow every thought. The traveler waited patiently. Taro looked toward the distant mountains. Then he pointed toward the traveler's backpack resting nearby. It was large, heavy, worn from years of travel. Tell me, Taro said gently, how long have you carried that backpack? The traveler glanced at it. Many years. And what is inside? The traveler shrugged. Clothes, food, tools, a few personal belongings. Taro nodded. Do you carry it while you sleep? The traveler laughed. Of course not. Why not? Because it's heavy. Taro smiled. Exactly. The traveler looked puzzled. The monk continued. Every night, you remove the backpack from your shoulders, because carrying unnecessary weight while sleeping would be exhausting. The traveler slowly nodded. Taro looked toward the stars, beginning to appear overhead. Most people understand how to put down a physical backpack, but very few know how to put down a mental one. The traveler became quiet. Taro continued speaking gently. Many people carry invisible burdens, regrets, fears, expectations, old conversations, imaginary futures. They carry them from morning until night, and then they wonder why they feel exhausted. The breeze moved softly through the trees. Lanterns glowed warmly around the temple grounds. The valley seemed suspended between earth and sky. Taro picked up a small stone from the ground. He placed it in the traveler's hand. Imagine this stone represents one worry. The traveler closed his fingers around it. It doesn't seem very heavy. No, Taro nodded. One worry rarely does. The monk picked up another stone, then another, and another. Soon the traveler's hands held several stones. The weight was still manageable, but it was noticeable now. Then Taro pointed toward the countless stones scattered around them. Imagine carrying hundreds of them. The traveler looked down. Understanding slowly dawned in his eyes. Most worries are small, Taro said softly. But when collected together, they become a burden. The traveler stared at the stones. For several moments, neither man spoke. The evening air felt cool and peaceful. A distant owl called from somewhere beyond the trees. The moon slowly rose above the mountains. Its pale light reflected upon the valley below. Finally, the traveler whispered, "I've been carrying too many stones." Taro nodded. Most people do. That night, after the traveler returned to his room, Taro remained beneath the cedar tree. He sat quietly, listening, breathing, observing. The world seemed different now, not because it had changed, but because he had changed. The same stars filled the sky. The same mountains surrounded the valley. The same stream flowed endlessly through the forest. And yet everything felt lighter, softer, gentler. As the night deepened, clouds drifted slowly across the moon. Their shadows moved silently over the hills. The valley grew quieter. The lanterns dimmed. One by one, the windows of the temple darkened. Soon, almost everyone was asleep. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, your own body is beginning to feel heavier, more relaxed, more comfortable. Perhaps your breathing has become slower. Perhaps your shoulders have softened. Perhaps your thoughts are no longer demanding so much attention. You do not need to force yourself to sleep. You do not need to chase sleep. Sleep arrives naturally. Just as evening becomes night, just as autumn becomes winter, just as the moon rises without effort, allow yourself to simply rest. Imagine yourself sitting beside that quiet stream. The water flows gently through the valley. Soft moonlight dances across its surface. The air is cool and peaceful. You hear the faint rustle of pine branches swaying in the wind. Nothing is asking anything from you. No deadlines. No responsibilities. No problems to solve. Only this moment. Only this breath. Only this gentle feeling of safety. Back at the temple, the traveler slept more deeply than he had in months. And in the days that followed, something unexpected began to happen. His worries did not disappear completely, but they no longer seemed so important. Whenever anxious thoughts appeared, he imagined placing another stone onto the ground, setting it down, releasing it, allowing himself to carry less. One evening, as he prepared to continue his journey, he approached Taro. "I think I understand now," he said. Taro smiled. "What do you understand?" The traveler looked toward the mountains, then toward the stars, then toward the quiet valley that had become a temporary home. "I don't need to carry everything," the monk nodded. A warm silence settled between them, because sometimes the deepest truths require very few words. The traveler bowed, and the following morning he left the valley. His backpack still rested upon his shoulders, but his invisible burdens had become much lighter. And as he disappeared along the winding mountain path, Taro noticed something. The traveler walked differently, more slowly, more peacefully, as though he trusted the road ahead, as though he no longer needed to know exactly where it would lead. The valley returned to its familiar stillness. The stream continued flowing. The trees continued swaying. The clouds continued drifting overhead. And deep within Taro's heart, another lesson quietly took root. Not every burden belongs to you. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every fear needs to be carried. Sometimes peace begins the moment you decide to set something down. Several weeks passed. Summer slowly unfolded across the valley. Wildflowers appeared along the hillsides. The forests grew greener. The mornings arrived, wrapped in silver mist. And each evening, the sky painted itself with colors so gentle that it often seemed impossible they were real. Taro continued his daily routine. He worked in the gardens, helped prepare meals, carried water from the stream, swept fallen leaves from the temple paths, and whenever time allowed, he returned to the quiet places that had become his teachers. The stream, the cedar tree, the mountain trail, the silent corners of the valley where nothing seemed to happen, yet where everything important seemed to be learned. One afternoon, after a light summer rain, Taro climbed a path he had never explored before. The trail wound upward through dense pine forests. Birdsong echoed between the trees. The scent of wet earth filled the air. As he climbed higher, the sounds of the temple gradually disappeared behind him. Eventually, he reached a small clearing hidden among the mountains. At its center lay a lake. The water was perfectly still. Not a ripple disturbed its surface. The lake reflected the sky so clearly that it seemed almost impossible to tell where the water ended and the heavens began. Clouds floated both above and below. Mountains rose both around and within the reflection. The entire world appeared doubled. Taro stood quietly at the water's edge. He felt an immediate sense of calm, a feeling deeper than words. As he sat beside the lake, he noticed Master Ren already there. The old monk sat comfortably on a smooth stone. His eyes rested upon the reflection. A faint smile touched his face. Taro bowed. The old monk returned the gesture. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt sacred, the kind of silence that cannot be improved by conversation. After several minutes, Master Ren finally spoke. "What do you see?" Taro studied the lake carefully. "I see the mountains, the clouds, the sky." The old monk nodded. "And why can you see them so clearly?" Taro looked again. The answer seemed obvious. "Because the water is calm." Master Ren smiled. "Exactly." The old monk pointed toward the reflection. "If the water became disturbed, what would happen?" "The reflection would disappear." Taro answered immediately. The old monk nodded. "And yet the mountains would remain. The sky would remain. The clouds would remain." Taro sat quietly. A gentle understanding began forming inside him. Master Ren continued. "Your mind is very much like this lake." The breeze softened. The forest seemed to listen. When your mind is agitated, when fear stirs it, when worry churns it, you can no longer see clearly. The old monk dipped his finger into the water. Ripples spread outward. The reflection shattered. The mountains dissolved into fragments. The clouds became distorted. The sky disappeared. Master Ren waited. Then he removed his finger. Slowly, very slowly, the ripples faded. The reflection returned. The mountains reappeared. The clouds drifted peacefully once more. The mind does not become clear by force. The old monk's voice was soft. It becomes clear when we stop disturbing it. Taro watched the lake, watched the reflection settle, watched the stillness return naturally, without effort, without struggle, without control. And suddenly he realized something. Much of his suffering had come from constantly stirring his own mind. Every anxious thought was examined. Every worry was analyzed. Every fear was questioned. Every uncertainty was investigated. He had spent years trying to solve every ripple. Instead of allowing the water to become still on its own, the realization felt gentle, like sunlight warming cold skin, like a knot slowly loosening, like a long exhale. After holding one's breath, the old monk closed his eyes. The forest grew quiet once more. Taro remained beside the lake until evening, watching, listening, learning. And perhaps now, as you listen to these words, you can imagine yourself there as well, beside the lake, beneath the mountains, wrapped in cool evening air. The water before you is perfectly calm, perfectly still. The sky above glows with fading shades of blue and gold. Clouds drift lazily across the horizon. The world feels peaceful, safe, unhurried. Notice your breathing. Slow, steady, natural. There is no need to control it, no need to change it. Simply allow each breath to arrive, and allow each breath to leave. Imagine your thoughts as ripples upon the lake. Some are small, some are larger, some appear unexpectedly, but none require action, none require effort. You do not need to chase them. You do not need to solve them. You do not need to follow them. Simply allow them to pass. Allow the water to settle. Allow the surface to grow still once more. The mountains remain. The sky remains. Your peace remains. Even when the water is disturbed, even when thoughts appear, even when worries arise, beneath every ripple lies stillness. Beneath every anxious thought lies calm. Beneath every fear lies a quiet place that has always been there, waiting patiently, waiting gently, waiting for you to remember it. As darkness slowly settled over the valley, Taro finally stood and began his journey home. The first stars appeared overhead. Fireflies glowed among the trees. The path beneath his feet seemed softer somehow, less urgent, less demanding. For the first time in many years, he no longer felt responsible for controlling every thought that entered his mind. He no longer believed that every worry required an answer. He no longer believed that every uncertainty needed to be resolved immediately. Some things could remain unknown. Some questions could remain unanswered. Some paths could reveal themselves gradually, and that was enough, more than enough. Far below, warm lanterns glowed from the temple windows. Their golden light shimmered softly through the evening mist. The valley welcomed him home, and as he walked beneath the stars, Taro felt lighter than he could remember. Not because life had become easier, not because uncertainty had vanished, but because he had finally stopped carrying the impossible burden of controlling everything. Above him, countless stars filled the night sky, silent, patient, timeless. And somewhere deep within the quiet valley, the stillness of the lake remained, reflecting the heavens, waiting peacefully beneath the moonlight, just as the deepest part of your own mind remains peaceful beneath every passing thought, always there, always waiting, always calm. The following morning arrived quietly. A thin layer of mist rested over the valley. The trees stood motionless in the pale light of dawn. The temple bells had not yet sounded. Even the birds seemed reluctant to disturb the silence. Taro awoke before sunrise. For a few moments, he remained lying peacefully beneath his blanket, listening, breathing, feeling the gentle rhythm of life moving around him. There was something different now, not dramatic, not sudden, simply different. The constant urgency that had once lived inside him no longer felt so strong. The endless pressure to solve everything, to understand everything, to prepare for everything. It had begun to soften, like snow melting beneath the warmth of spring, like morning fog dissolving beneath sunlight. After breakfast, Master Ren invited Taro to join him in the temple gardens. The old monk was kneeling beside a row of flowering plants. His hands moved slowly through the soil, removing weeds, adjusting stones, caring for the garden with quiet attention. Taro knelt beside him. Together they worked in comfortable silence. The scent of flowers drifted through the cool air. Bees moved lazily between blossoms. The morning sun filtered gently through the trees. Eventually, Master Ren pointed toward a small flower bud. It remained tightly closed, not yet ready to bloom. "Taro," the old monk said softly, "what would happen if we tried to force this flower to open today?" Taro smiled. "It would be damaged." Master Ren nodded. "Even if our intentions were good?" "Yes." "Even if we wanted it to bloom?" "Yes." The old monk carefully touched one of the leaves. "The flower knows when to bloom. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It unfolds according to its own nature." The breeze carried the scent of pine through the garden. The old monk continued, "Many people treat themselves differently than they treat flowers." Taro listened carefully. They expect themselves to grow instantly. They demand perfection. They become frustrated when healing takes time. They become anxious when life does not unfold according to their schedule. The old monk smiled gently. And then they wonder why they suffer. The words settled deeply within Taro, because he recognized himself in them. For years, he had tried to force growth, force wisdom, force peace, force certainty, even force sleep. Every night, he had demanded that his mind become quiet, demanded that his worries disappear, demanded that his future become clear. And every night he had become frustrated when reality refused to obey. Master Ren carefully watered the flower. A few drops sparkled in the sunlight. You cannot force a flower to bloom. You can only create conditions that allow it to bloom naturally. The old monk looked toward the mountains. The same is true of peace. The garden became quiet once more. Only the soft sounds of nature remained. The rustling leaves, the distant stream, the gentle hum of insects moving through the warm morning air. Taro gazed at the unopened flower. Its petals remained hidden, patient, unhurried, trusting its own timing. And suddenly he realized how much of his anxiety had been created by rushing himself, rushing life, rushing the future, always trying to arrive somewhere else, always believing that peace existed somewhere ahead, instead of noticing that peace had been available all along, hidden within the present moment, waiting patiently, like a flower waiting for spring. The day passed slowly. Clouds drifted lazily overhead. Sunlight moved across the valley. The hours unfolded without hurry. And as evening approached, Taro found himself sitting beside the stream once more. The water moved gently over smooth stones. Its sound was soft and soothing, like a lullaby created by nature itself. He watched a leaf float downstream, then another, then another. Each one carried effortlessly by the current. None resisted. None worried about where they were going. None struggled against the flow. They simply allowed themselves to be carried. Perhaps now, as you listen, you can imagine yourself beside that stream. The evening air is cool, comfortable. The sky above glows with soft shades of deep blue and violet. Stars begin appearing one by one. The first lanterns around the temple flicker to life. Their golden light reflects upon the water. Everything feels peaceful, safe, quiet. There is nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to achieve. Nothing you need to prove. Allow your body to grow heavier. Allow your muscles to soften. Allow your breathing to become slow and natural. Notice how the stream never rushes. It never hurries toward tomorrow. It never regrets yesterday. It simply flows, moment by moment, breath by breath. Perhaps you can do the same. Perhaps tonight you can release the need to figure everything out. Perhaps tonight you can set down the invisible stones you have been carrying. The worries, the expectations, the unanswered questions, the endless what-ifs. You do not need them right now. They can wait until morning. And if morning comes, you will meet it then. Not now. Now is for resting. Now is for healing. Now is for sleep. The stars continue appearing above the valley. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. The moon slowly rises over the distant mountains. Silver light spills across the landscape. The stream glimmers softly beneath its glow. The entire valley seems wrapped in stillness, wrapped in peace, wrapped in silence. Taro sat there long into the evening, watching the water, watching the stars, watching life unfold exactly as it wished, without force, without struggle, without urgency. And as he sat there, he felt something he had spent years searching for. Not excitement, not achievement, not certainty. Something quieter, something gentler. Acceptance. The acceptance that life unfolds in its own time, that healing unfolds in its own time, that peace unfolds in its own time, just as flowers bloom in their own time, just as night arrives in its own time, just as sleep arrives in its own time. The more you chase it, the farther it seems. The more you allow it, the closer it comes. And somewhere beneath the moonlit sky, beside the softly flowing stream, Taro closed his eyes, not because he was seeking peace, but because peace had already found him. Like moonlight finding the surface of a quiet lake, like a gentle breeze finding the branches of a pine tree, like sleep slowly finding a tired and willing mind. And all around him, the valley rested peacefully beneath the stars. Summer continued its slow journey through the valley. The days were warm, the evenings were cool, and the night seemed to stretch endlessly beneath the stars. By now, Taro had begun sleeping more peacefully. Not every night, not perfectly, but enough to notice, enough to feel the difference. The anxious thoughts still visited him from time to time, but they no longer controlled him. They arrived, they lingered, and then they left. Like clouds crossing a wide and open sky. One afternoon, Master Ren invited Taro on a walk beyond the valley. Together they followed a narrow path winding through forests and hills. The air smelled of cedar and wildflowers. Sunlight flickered through the branches above. Neither monk spoke very much. There was no need. The quiet itself felt like a conversation. Eventually they arrived at a broad river. Its waters moved slowly beneath the afternoon sun. Near the shore rested a small wooden boat. Old, weathered, simple. Master Ren sat upon a smooth rock and looked out across the river. For several minutes, he remained silent. Then he asked, "Taro, have you ever been struck by another boat?" Taro laughed softly. "No, Master, The old monk smiled. Imagine this. He pointed toward the water. You are sitting alone in a small boat. The river is calm. The day is peaceful. You are enjoying the silence. The old monk's voice grew softer. Then suddenly another boat drifts across the river and crashes into yours. Taro nodded. I would be startled, perhaps annoyed. Master Ren agreed, perhaps very annoyed. The old monk smiled knowingly. What if you looked up and saw someone sitting inside the boat? Taro considered the question. I might become angry. Why? Because I would believe they were careless. The old monk nodded. Exactly. They watched the river flow quietly before them. Then Master Ren continued. But what if you looked into the boat and found it empty? Taro frowned slightly. Empty. The old monk nodded. No one inside. No one steering. No one responsible. Only an empty boat, drifting with the current. Taro smiled. Then I could not be angry. Master Ren's eyes sparkled. Why not? Because there would be no one to blame. The old monk leaned back comfortably. The afternoon breeze moved gently across the water. The river shimmered beneath the sunlight. Then Master Ren said something Taro would never forget. Most of the boats that strike us in life are empty. The words settled into the silence. Taro remained very still. The old monk continued. When someone speaks harshly, when someone ignores us, when someone disappoints us, we immediately create a story. The river flowed steadily onward. We imagine intention. We imagine judgment. We imagine criticism. We imagine rejection. The old monk smiled softly. And then we suffer because of the story we created. Taro felt a familiar sensation, the feeling of a lesson slowly unfolding, like a flower opening beneath sunlight. Master Ren picked up a small stick and traced circles in the sand. Most people spend their lives worrying about what others think of them. The stick moved gently through the earth. They replay conversations. They analyze expressions. They search for hidden meanings. They imagine criticism where none exists. The old monk looked toward the river. But often, the boat is empty. A bird glided silently across the water. Its reflection moved beneath it like a shadow. The river remained calm, untroubled, unconcerned. Master Ren continued. The mind creates suffering when it assumes too much. Taro thought about countless nights spent replaying old conversations, wondering if he had said the wrong thing, wondering if someone disliked him, wondering if he had failed in some invisible way. How many hours had he spent trapped inside imagined scenarios? How many worries had been built upon assumptions? How many sleepless nights had begun with an empty boat? The realization felt strangely comforting, not because it solved every problem, but because it revealed how many problems had never truly existed. The afternoon slowly faded toward evening. Golden light stretched across the river. The forest glowed softly beneath the setting sun. Taro sat quietly, watching the current, watching the drifting leaves, watching the endless movement of water. And perhaps now, as you listen, you can imagine yourself sitting beside that same river. The day is ending. The air is cool, comfortable, peaceful. The sunlight has softened into warm shades of gold. The river moves slowly before you, gentle, steady, effortless. Imagine placing your worries into small wooden boats. One by one, the worry about tomorrow. Place it into a boat. The worry about what others think. Place it into another. The worry about mistakes. the worry about the future, the worry about things you cannot control. Each one gently placed upon the water, then watch them drift away. No effort, no struggle. The current carries them naturally, farther and farther downstream, smaller and smaller, until they disappear beyond the bend of the river. Feel your shoulders relaxing. Feel your breathing slowing. Feel your body growing heavier, more comfortable, more peaceful. There is nothing to solve right now, nothing to fix, nothing to understand. The river does not need answers. The stars do not need answers. The mountains do not need answers, and neither do you. For this moment, it is enough to simply rest. The sun finally slipped beyond the horizon. The first stars appeared overhead. The river reflected them like scattered diamonds upon dark water. Master Ren stood slowly. Taro joined him. Together they began walking back toward the valley. The path wound gently through the forest. Crickets sang softly in the growing darkness. Lanterns glowed faintly in the distance, their golden light welcoming them home. As they walked, Taro felt lighter once again. Another invisible burden had been set down, another stone released, another unnecessary worry carried away by the current, and somewhere behind them, the river continued flowing beneath the stars, patient, timeless, untroubled, carrying countless empty boats toward the sea. That night, after returning from the river, Taro found himself unable to sleep immediately. But this was different from the restless nights of the past. There was no anxiety, no racing thoughts, no desperate search for answers. Instead, there was simply wakefulness, gentle, quiet, unhurried. The temple had fallen silent. Lanterns glowed faintly along the wooden walkways. The evening breeze moved softly through the pine trees. Somewhere in the distance, the stream continued its endless journey through the valley. Taro stepped outside and walked toward a small hill overlooking the temple grounds. The grass beneath his feet felt cool. The air smelled faintly of cedar and earth. Above him stretched a sky unlike anything seen during the day. A sky filled with stars. Thousands upon thousands of stars. Some bright, some faint, some appearing close, others impossibly distant. Together they formed a silent ocean of light. Taro sat upon the hillside and looked upward. For a long time, he did nothing else. He simply watched the stars shimmer softly against the darkness, watched thin clouds drift slowly across the heavens, watched the moon cast silver light across the sleeping valley below. The world felt enormous, and somehow, because of that, his worries felt smaller. A short while later, he heard gentle footsteps approaching. Without turning around, he already knew who it was. Master Ren lowered himself onto the grass beside him. Neither spoke. The old monk looked up at the stars. A faint smile touched his face. The two sat together in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that asks for nothing, the kind of silence that heals. Eventually Master Ren pointed toward the sky. Taro. Yes, Master. Do you see those stars? Taro smiled. Of course. The old monk nodded. Tell me, how many of them are you responsible for? Taro laughed softly. None. How many must you control? None. How many require your permission to shine? Taro shook his head. None. The old monk remained quiet for a moment. Then he said softly, and yet they shine. The words drifted through the night air. Simple, gentle, powerful. Master Ren continued. The moon rises, the stars shine, the rivers flow, the seasons change, the breeze moves through the grass around them. Life is filled with things that happen without your control. The old monk looked toward the horizon, and thankfully so. Taro listened carefully, because he sensed another lesson arriving. Master Ren folded his hands comfortably in his lap. Many people spend their lives believing peace will come after they gain control. The stars glittered overhead. They think, when I know what will happen, then I can relax. When everything is certain, then I can sleep. When nothing can go wrong, then I can feel safe. The old monk chuckled softly. But life has never made such promises. The valley remained still beneath the moonlight. Master Ren pointed toward the sky once more. Imagine if you demanded certainty from the stars. The old monk smiled. You would never sleep again. Taro laughed quietly. The image was absurd, yet strangely familiar, because he had spent years demanding certainty from life itself. Years demanding guarantees. Years demanding answers. Years demanding reassurance. And all the while, life had continued unfolding, exactly as it always had. Unpredictably, beautifully, naturally, without asking permission. The old monk leaned back and closed his eyes. The stars do not know what tomorrow brings. The river does not know where every turn will lead. The trees do not know how strong the next storm will be. A gentle pause followed, yet none of them seemed anxious about it. The words settled deeply within Taro's heart. For a long time, he simply stared upward, watching the stars, feeling the cool night air upon his skin, listening to the sounds of the sleeping valley, and gradually, a feeling of spaciousness began to emerge. A feeling that there was room enough for uncertainty, room enough for unanswered questions, room enough for imperfection. Perhaps peace was not created by eliminating uncertainty. Perhaps peace came from making peace with uncertainty. The realization felt like opening a tightly closed hand. A release. A softening. A surrender. The moon climbed higher. Its silver light bathed the hills and forests below. The valley looked almost dreamlike, as though it existed somewhere between waking and sleeping, between thought and silence, between effort and rest. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself sitting beside Taro beneath the stars. The grass is cool beneath you. The night air is calm and gentle. The world around you feels safe, quiet, protected. Above you stretches an endless sky, filled with stars, each one shining peacefully in the darkness. Notice how none of them are rushing. None of them are worried. None of them are trying to become anything other than what they are. They simply exist. And perhaps, for this moment, you can allow yourself to do the same. You do not need to become better tonight. You do not need to solve your future tonight. You do not need to understand everything tonight. Tonight, you are allowed to simply be. Notice your breathing. Slow, gentle, natural. Feel your chest rise softly and fall softly, again and again. Each breath carrying away a little more tension, a little more effort, a little more weight. Imagine every exhale dissolving worry like mist beneath morning sunlight. Imagine every inhale filling you with calm, with stillness, with quiet. The stars remain above you, patient, timeless, watching over the sleeping world. The moon continues its journey across the sky. The forests rest. The mountains rest. The river rests within its endless movement. And little by little, you too may begin to feel yourself drifting, not forcing sleep, not chasing it, simply allowing yourself to move closer, like a leaf floating gently downstream, like a cloud drifting across a peaceful sky, like night slowly becoming deeper. Back on the hillside, Taro felt his eyes growing heavy. The cool air, the silver moonlight, the endless stars, everything seemed to whisper the same message. You do not need to carry the universe. You do not need to control tomorrow. You do not need to know every answer. You are allowed to rest. The words echoed softly inside him, not as thoughts, but as understanding, as truth, as peace. Eventually, Master Ren stood. Taro followed. Together, they began walking back toward the temple. Neither spoke. The lesson had already been given. The stars continued shining overhead. The moon continued glowing. The valley continued sleeping peacefully beneath the night sky. And somewhere deep within Taro's heart, a new kind of trust had begun to grow. A trust in life. A trust in uncertainty. A trust that not everything needed to be controlled in order to be beautiful. The night welcomed them home, and the stars watched silently as they disappeared into the gentle darkness. The next few days passed in quiet simplicity. The valley moved through its familiar rhythms. Morning mist drifted across the hills. Birds greeted the sunrise. The stream sang its endless song through the forest. And each evening, the stars returned to their places in the sky. Life continued, gentle, steady, unhurried. One afternoon, after completing his work in the gardens, Taro wandered farther into the forest than usual. The air was warm. Soft sunlight filtered through the trees. The path beneath his feet was covered with fallen needles and leaves that muffled every sound. The deeper he walked, the quieter the world became. Eventually, he came upon a grove of bamboo. Tall green stalks stretched high into the sky. Their leaves whispered softly in the breeze. The entire grove seemed alive with movement. Yet despite the movement, everything felt peaceful, balanced, still. Taro stepped inside. The air felt cooler beneath the bamboo canopy. Sunlight danced across the ground in shifting patterns. Everywhere he looked, the bamboo swayed gently with the wind. Never resisting, never fighting, simply moving with whatever arrived. Taro sat beneath the tallest stalk and closed his eyes. The sounds around him were soothing. The rustling leaves, the distant birds, the gentle breeze. It felt as though the entire grove was breathing. In and out, in and out. Time seemed to slow. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. It became difficult to tell. Eventually, he heard familiar footsteps approaching. Master Ren emerged quietly between the bamboo stalks. The old monk smiled when he saw Taro. Without speaking, he sat nearby. Together they listened to the forest. The bamboo continued swaying overhead. The breeze came and went. Nothing remained still, yet nothing appeared disturbed. After a long silence, Master Ren pointed toward one of the tallest bamboo stalks. Taro. Yes, Master. What do you notice? Taro looked carefully. The bamboo moved with every gust of wind. It bends. The old monk nodded. And why doesn't it break? Taro watched as another breeze passed through the grove. The stalk bowed gracefully, then returned upright. Because it is flexible, Master Ren smiled. Exactly. The old monk folded his hands peacefully. The bamboo survives not because it is rigid. It survives because it knows how to bend. The leaves whispered overhead. The lesson unfolded quietly. Like so many lessons before it. The strongest tree may resist the storm, Master Ren said. But sometimes resistance becomes its weakness. The breeze strengthened slightly. The bamboo bowed once more, graceful, effortless. The bamboo allows the wind to pass through. It adapts, it yields, and because of this, it endures. Taro remained silent. His thoughts drifted toward the struggles he had carried for so many years. How often had he resisted reality? How often had he fought uncertainty? How often had he demanded that life unfold according to his plans? And each time life moved differently, he suffered. Not because life was wrong, but because he resisted what already was. The realization felt familiar. Another stone being set down, another burden gently released. Master Ren continued. Many people believe strength means never bending. The old monk smiled softly. But true strength often looks much gentler. The bamboo grove swayed around them. An endless dance between movement and stillness. Effort and ease. Change and acceptance. The old monk closed his eyes. The river bends around stones. The clouds move around mountains. The bamboo bends with the wind. A long pause followed. Nature wastes very little energy fighting reality. The words settled deeply into the afternoon silence. Taro watched the bamboo, watched its effortless cooperation with the wind, and, for the first time, he began to understand that peace was not always found through control. Sometimes peace was found through surrender. Not surrender as defeat, but surrender as trust. Trust in life. Trust in change. Trust in the natural unfolding of things. The afternoon slowly drifted toward evening. Golden light filled the grove. The bamboo leaves shimmered softly. The entire forest seemed wrapped in warmth. And perhaps now, as you listen to these words, you can imagine yourself sitting there as well, in the bamboo grove, surrounded by soft green light, protected by the tall swaying stalks. The air is cool, comfortable, peaceful. The breeze moves gently around you. Nothing harsh, nothing demanding. Only softness, only calm, only stillness. Notice your breathing. Slow, easy, natural. Allow your shoulders to relax. Allow your arms to grow heavy. Allow your jaw to soften. There is nowhere you need to go. Nothing you need to accomplish. For this moment, you are simply resting. Imagine that every worry is like a gust of wind. It arrives, it lingers briefly, and then it passes. You do not need to stop it. You do not need to fight it. You do not need to follow it. Like the bamboo, you can simply bend, allowing the moment to move through you, allowing thoughts to come and go, allowing feelings to rise and fall. The breeze continues. The bamboo sways, the forest remains peaceful, and gradually, your body may begin to feel heavier, warmer, more relaxed. The muscles around your eyes soften. Your forehead becomes smooth. Your breathing grows slower still. The day begins to fade away. The worries of yesterday fade away. The concerns of tomorrow fade away. Only this moment remains. Only this breath, only this gentle feeling of safety. As evening settled over the valley, Taro and Master Ren slowly rose to their feet. The bamboo grove glowed with the last light of day. Long shadows stretched across the forest floor. The first stars were beginning to appear overhead. Together they walked back toward the temple. The path seemed quieter than before. Or perhaps Taro's mind had become quieter. It was difficult to tell. The forest welcomed the coming night. Birdsong faded. Crickets began their evening chorus. The air cooled pleasantly, and as darkness slowly wrapped itself around the valley, Taro carried another lesson home with him. A lesson written not in words, but in movement, in stillness, in the gentle wisdom of bamboo. You do not need to resist every wind. You do not need to control every change. You do not need to fight every uncertainty. Sometimes the path to peace is softer than that. Sometimes the path to peace is simply learning how to bend. And somewhere beyond the forest, beneath a sky filled with stars, the bamboo continued its endless dance with the wind. Graceful, patient, peaceful, exactly as it had always been. Autumn arrived quietly in the valley, almost unnoticed. The mornings became cooler. The evenings arrived earlier. Golden leaves began appearing among the trees. The mountains seemed softer somehow beneath the changing light. And as the seasons shifted, so too did something within Taro. His thoughts still came. His worries still visited from time to time. But they no longer stayed as long. They no longer felt as heavy. Like clouds drifting across a vast sky, they arrived and departed according to their own nature. One evening, as twilight settled across the valley, the monks gathered near the river. It was a tradition, practiced only once each year. A simple ceremony, quiet, beautiful, peaceful, no music, no speeches, no celebrations, only lanterns, hundreds of lanterns. Small lanterns, crafted from thin paper and light wood, each containing a single candle, each glowing with warm golden light. The river flowed slowly beneath the darkening sky. The first stars were beginning to appear overhead. The mountains stood silently around the valley, watching, waiting. The monks moved carefully along the riverbank. One by one, they placed lanterns upon the water, tiny lights drifting into the darkness. Tiny stars floating downstream. The sight was breathtaking. The river became a ribbon of gold winding through the night. Taro stood quietly beside Master Ren. Together they watched the lanterns begin their journey. The old monk handed Taro a lantern. Its candle flickered softly inside. Warm, steady, gentle. Taro held it carefully. For a moment, neither spoke. The river continued flowing. The stars continued appearing overhead. The valley seemed suspended between earth and sky. Finally, Master Ren spoke. "Tonight, place something into the lantern." Taro looked at him. "Something." The old monk nodded. "A burden, a fear, a worry, anything you no longer wish to carry." The candlelight danced softly between them. Taro lowered his gaze. At first, he struggled to choose. For so many years he had carried countless worries, some large, some small, some real, some imagined. Yet as he stood beside the river, only one came to mind. The need to know. The endless need to know what would happen next. The need for certainty. The need for guarantees. The need for control. He closed his eyes briefly and imagined placing that burden into the lantern. Not physically, but in his heart, in his mind. A simple act of release. A quiet act of trust. When he opened his eyes again, the lantern seemed brighter somehow. Lighter. Master Ren smiled. Then he nodded toward the river. Slowly, Taro knelt beside the water. The surface reflected both stars and lanterns. Above and below, sky and river, light and reflection. Almost impossible to distinguish one from the other. Carefully, he placed the lantern upon the current. For a brief moment, it remained near the shore. Then the river carried it gently away, joining the others, drifting into the darkness, floating beneath the stars. Taro watched until he could no longer tell which lantern had been his. Then he realized something. It did not matter. The burden was no longer being carried. That was enough. More than enough. Around him, hundreds of lanterns continued their silent journey downstream. Some moved quickly, others slowly, each following its own path, each carried by the same river. Master Ren sat upon a nearby stone. His face glowed softly in the candlelight. For a long time, neither monk spoke. Words seemed unnecessary. The river was teaching. The lanterns were teaching. The night itself was teaching. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself standing beside that river. The night air is cool and peaceful. The stars shine softly above. The water moves gently before you. In your hands rests a small lantern. Its warm golden light flickers quietly. Safe, steady, comforting. Take a moment and imagine placing something into that lantern. Not a physical object, a burden, a worry, a fear. Perhaps it is something that has followed you for many days, perhaps many months, perhaps many years. You do not need to examine it. You do not need to understand it. You do not need to solve it. Simply place it inside. Allow the lantern to carry it. Now imagine lowering the lantern onto the water. The current accepts it immediately. The river knows what to do. You do not need to guide it. You do not need to push it. The river carries it naturally, effortlessly. Watch as it drifts farther away, smaller, softer, lighter. Another lantern appears. Place another burden inside. A worry about tomorrow. A regret from yesterday. A fear about something beyond your control. Allow the lantern to carry it away. Again and again. One lantern for every unnecessary weight you have been carrying. The river accepts them all. Without judgment. Without resistance. Without question. The current carries them gently into the night. Far beyond the bend. Far beyond the mountains. Far beyond the horizon. And with every lantern that drifts away, your body becomes more relaxed, more comfortable, more peaceful. Your shoulders soften, your breathing slows, the muscles in your face relax completely. Even your thoughts seem quieter now, like distant echoes fading into the darkness. The river glows with hundreds of floating lights, each one carrying a burden, each one carrying a worry, each one carrying something that no longer needs to be held. The sight is beautiful, calming, hypnotic. The lanterns drift farther and farther away until they resemble stars floating upon the water, tiny points of golden light moving slowly through the darkness. Eventually, the river seems filled with nothing but light and silence and peace. Back in the valley, the monks remained beside the river until late into the night, watching, breathing, resting. No one rushed, no one hurried home. The ceremony required no ending, only presence, only awareness, only stillness. As the final lanterns disappeared into the darkness, Taro felt an unfamiliar sensation. Not excitement, not happiness, something quieter. A deep and gentle trust. Trust in the river, trust in life, trust in the unfolding of tomorrow. For the first time, he no longer felt responsible for carrying every burden alone. The river carried some, time carried some, life carried some, and many never needed to be carried at all. Above him, the stars continued shining. Below him, the river continued flowing. Between them stood a quiet monk beneath the night sky, breathing slowly, breathing softly, feeling lighter than ever before. And somewhere, deep within the peaceful darkness, sleep waited patiently, closer now than before, gentle, silent, certain. Several days after the lantern ceremony, the valley settled once more into its familiar rhythm. Morning mist drifted through the forests. The river continued its endless journey. The mountains stood quietly beneath the changing skies. And life moved forward, one gentle moment at a time. One afternoon, after finishing his work in the gardens, Taro decided to explore a path he had never taken before. The trail wound through a quiet part of the forest. Tall cedar trees lined both sides. Their branches swayed softly in the breeze. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in scattered patches of gold. The deeper he walked, the quieter everything became. Soon, even the sounds of the temple disappeared. Only birdsong and wind remained. After some time, Taro reached a small clearing. At the center stood an old wooden house. It appeared abandoned, weathered by many seasons. Its walls were faded, its roof covered with moss. Yet there was something curious about it. The house contained an extraordinary number of doors. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Doors of every shape and size. Some large, some small, some painted, some plain, all closed, every single one. Taro stood staring. The sight felt strangely dreamlike, as though the house had emerged from a forgotten story. Slowly, he approached. The air felt still around him, almost sacred. As he reached the front porch, he noticed someone already sitting there. Master Ren. The old monk smiled gently, as though he had been expecting him. Taro bowed respectfully. Master. Master Ren nodded. Then he gestured toward the strange house. What do you see? Taro looked again. Many doors. The old monk smiled. Very many doors. They sat together on the porch. The forest whispered softly around them. The house remained silent, its countless doors staring outward like unopened possibilities. After several minutes, Master Ren asked, "How many of these doors have you opened?" Taro laughed. "None." The old monk nodded. "And yet, can you imagine what lies behind them?" Taro looked toward the endless rows of doors. Of course he could imagine. A library, a treasure room, a garden, a storm, a monster, an empty room. Anything seemed possible. Master Ren continued. Now imagine spending your entire life worrying about what might be behind every unopened door. Taro became quiet. The old monk's voice softened. Imagine lying awake at night wondering, what if that door hides danger? What if another contains disappointment? What if another contains failure? What if another contains loss? The breeze moved gently through the clearing. The old monk looked toward the forest. How much peace would remain? Taro lowered his gaze. The answer was obvious. very little. Master Ren continued. Most people live this way. The words settled into the afternoon air. They spend their lives worrying about unopened doors. The old monk pointed toward the house. Doors called tomorrow. Doors called next year. Doors called what if. Doors called maybe. The house stood silently before them, a monument to uncertainty, a reflection of the human mind. We imagine endless possibilities, the old monk said softly. And then we suffer because of our imagination. Taro felt something stir inside him, because once again, he recognized himself. For years, he had wandered through imaginary futures, opening countless doors in his mind, exploring problems that never arrived, fearing events that never happened, preparing for disasters that existed only in imagination. How much energy had been spent inside rooms that were never real? How many sleepless nights had been devoted to unopened doors? Master Ren stood slowly. Then he walked toward one of the nearest doors. Without hesitation, he opened it. Taro leaned forward, curious. The door creaked softly. Inside was an empty room. Nothing more. No danger. No mystery. No problem. Only emptiness. The old monk smiled. Then he opened another. Again. Nothing. A third. Nothing. A fourth. Nothing. One empty room after another. The old monk returned to the porch. You see, Taro nodded slowly. Many of the fears he had carried throughout life had proven similar, immense from a distance, harmless upon arrival. The old monk folded his hands. Most suffering comes not from reality, a pause, but from imagination. The forest grew quiet. Even the wind seemed to listen. Master Ren continued. Reality often asks much less of us than our fears do. Taro looked once more toward the countless doors. This time they seemed different, less threatening, less important. They were simply doors, nothing more. Some would open someday, others never would. Either way, worrying about them now changed nothing. The realization felt like another deep breath, another weight released, another burden gently set aside. The afternoon slowly faded. Golden sunlight stretched across the clearing. Long shadows appeared beneath the trees. The old house glowed softly in the evening light. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself standing before that same house. Rows upon rows of unopened doors, each one representing a possibility, a future event, an unanswered question, a concern, a fear, a what if. Notice how many doors there are. Too many to count, too many to explore, too many to worry about. Now imagine, stepping back. You do not need to open them tonight. You do not need to inspect them. You do not need to solve them. They can remain closed. For now, for this moment, you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to leave the doors alone. Tomorrow will open its own door when it arrives. Next week will open its own door. Next year will open its own door. But tonight no door needs to be opened. Notice how relaxing that feels. How peaceful. How gentle. Your shoulders soften. Your breathing slows. Your body grows heavier. The house remains where it is. The doors remain closed. And you remain safe, protected, resting peacefully beneath the evening sky. As darkness slowly settled over the clearing, Taro and Master Ren began walking back toward the valley. The old house disappeared among the trees behind them, its countless doors fading into the shadows. Yet the lesson remained, clearer than ever before. You do not need to live inside imaginary futures. You do not need to explore every possibility. You do not need to solve problems that do not yet exist. Life opens one door at a time, one moment at a time, one step at a time, and that is enough. More than enough. Above them, the first stars appeared once again. The forest welcomed the coming night. The valley waited peacefully in the distance, and somewhere, deep within Taro's heart, another unnecessary burden quietly disappeared, like a lantern drifting downstream, like a cloud dissolving into the sky, like a dream fading gently into sleep. The journey back from the house of unopened doors was quiet. The forest glowed beneath the silver light of the moon. The path wound gently through the trees. Leaves rustled softly overhead. The cool night air carried the scent of cedar and distant rain. Neither Taro nor Master Wren spoke. There was no need. Some lessons continued unfolding long after the words had ended, and this was one of them. For days afterward, Taro found himself thinking about the countless doors, the futures he had imagined, the fears he had rehearsed, the problems he had solved before they even existed. It was astonishing how much energy the mind could spend wandering through places that were not real. Yet now, whenever he noticed himself drifting into those imagined futures, he smiled gently, then returned to the present. Returned to his breath. Returned to the simple reality of whatever moment he was living. One cool autumn morning, Master Wren invited Taro to accompany him on another walk. This time they traveled higher into the mountains than ever before. The path was steep, but peaceful. Golden leaves covered the ground. Mist drifted between ancient trees. The sky above was clear and pale blue. As they climbed, the valley gradually disappeared below them. Soon only mountains remained. Mountains and sky. Eventually, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking a vast landscape. The view stretched endlessly in every direction. Forests, rivers, distant peaks, everything bathed in soft morning light. Master Wren stopped walking. Then he pointed toward a neighboring mountain. Taro, listen. The young monk stood quietly. At first, he heard only wind, then birds, then silence. I hear nothing unusual. Master Wren smiled. Then he cupped his hands around his mouth and called loudly across the valley. Hello. The sound echoed through the mountains. Hello. 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 The voice returned again and again, growing softer each time, until it disappeared. The old monk turned toward Taro. What caused the echo? My voice. Master Wren nodded. And yet the mountain did not create the sound. No, it merely returned it. Taro watched the distant cliffs. The lesson was already beginning to reveal itself. The old monk sat upon a large stone. The morning breeze moved gently around them. The human mind behaves much like these mountains. Taro listened carefully. When a thought appears, the mind often echoes it. Master Wren's voice remained soft. A small worry appears. Then he continued. What if tomorrow is difficult? The old monk paused. A simple thought. The wind whispered through the grass. But then, the echo begins. What if I fail? What if things go wrong? What if I cannot handle it? What if everything becomes worse? The questions seemed to drift through the mountain air, one becoming many, one thought becoming dozens. one concern becoming a storm. The old monk smiled knowingly. The original thought was small. The suffering came from the echoes. Taro immediately understood. How many sleepless nights had begun this way? One thought, then another, each echo creating the next, until he found himself trapped inside an endless conversation with his own mind. Master Ren pointed toward the mountains once more. If I stop shouting, the old monk smiled. What happens? The echo fades. Exactly. The silence around them deepened. Golden sunlight touched the distant peaks. Clouds drifted slowly across the horizon. The old monk folded his hands. Most people spend their lives arguing with echoes. The words settle gently, like falling leaves. They answer every thought. They challenge every fear. They analyze every worry. And in doing so, they create even more echoes. The mountains stood quietly around them, patient, still, unmoved. Taro closed his eyes. For a moment, he listened to his own mind. A few thoughts appeared, then faded. Another arrived, then disappeared. For perhaps the first time, he saw them clearly. Not as commands, not as truths, not as problems demanding solutions. Simply echoes, passing sounds within a vast inner landscape. Nothing more. The realization brought an immediate sense of relief. Like stepping out of a crowded room into fresh air. Like removing a heavy backpack after a long journey. Like finally understanding that every knock at the door does not require an answer. The morning slowly passed. Taro and Master Ren remained upon the ridge, watching clouds drift across the mountains, watching sunlight move across distant forests, watching shadows slowly change shape. Everything seemed effortless. Everything seemed calm. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself sitting beside them, high above the valley, surrounded by mountains. The air is cool and clean. The sky stretches endlessly above. The world feels wide, open, peaceful. Notice your breathing. Slow, gentle, natural. A thought may appear. That is perfectly fine. You do not need to stop it. You do not need to follow it. Simply notice it. Then allow it to drift away. Like a cloud crossing the sky. Like a leaf floating down a stream. Like an echo fading among distant mountains. Another thought may appear. Allow it the same freedom. No resistance, no struggle, no judgment. Only awareness. Only observation. The mountains do not chase echoes. The sky does not argue with clouds. The river does not fight the leaves it carries. And tonight, perhaps you do not need to fight your thoughts either. Allow them to come. Allow them to go. Trust that they know how to leave on their own. Your only task is to rest, to breathe, to be here, nothing more. The sunlight grew warmer as midday approached. The mountains shimmered beneath the clear sky. A hawk circled high above. The valley rested far below. Small, peaceful, distant. Eventually, Master Ren stood. Taro followed. Together they began the long walk back toward the temple. As they descended the mountain path, Taro noticed something unusual. His mind felt quieter. Not empty. Not silent. Simply spacious. The thoughts were still there, but they no longer filled the entire landscape. There was space around them now. Room for stillness. Room for peace. Room for rest. The echoes had not disappeared, but he no longer mistook them for reality, and that made all the difference. Far below, The temple bells rang softly through the valley. Their sound floated upward on the breeze, gentle, warm, welcoming, calling them home. The mountains remained behind them, silent and wise, holding their ancient lesson within the stone, a lesson carried now within Taro as well, and perhaps within you. Not every thought deserves an answer. Not every echo deserves attention. Sometimes peace arrives the moment we stop responding and simply allow the mountains to grow quiet once more. The days grew shorter. The mornings arrived wrapped in silver mist. And throughout the valley, autumn deepened. The forests transformed little by little. Green leaves turned golden. Golden leaves turned amber. Amber leaves turned shades of copper and crimson. The mountains seemed painted by a patient artist. Every hillside glowed beneath the soft autumn light. Every path became covered with fallen leaves. The entire valley felt quieter somehow, more reflective, more peaceful. One afternoon, after the midday meal, Taro wandered into an old garden hidden behind the temple. Few people visited this place. There were no flowers, no vegetables, no carefully arranged stones. Only trees, ancient trees. Their branches stretched toward the sky. Their roots disappeared deep into the earth, and all around them, leaves drifted slowly downward, one by one, without hurry, without resistance. The garden had become a place of endings, and because of that, it had become a place of great beauty. Taro sat beneath a maple tree. The air felt cool against his skin. Above him, golden leaves trembled gently in the breeze. Then one loosened its grip. It floated downward, spinning slowly, dancing through shafts of sunlight, before finally coming to rest upon the ground. Moments later, another followed, then another, and another. The entire garden seemed engaged in a silent act of letting go. Taro watched quietly. The sight was strangely comforting. No leaf appeared afraid. No leaf struggled to remain attached. No leaf resisted the season. Each one simply released itself when the time came. The breeze carried another shower of leaves through the air. The forest floor welcomed them all, softly, patiently, without judgment. After some time, Master Ren appeared. The old monk moved slowly through the garden. His footsteps barely disturbed the fallen leaves. When he reached Taro, he sat nearby. Together they watched the trees, the leaves, the drifting sunlight, the endless dance of autumn. For a long while, neither spoke. Eventually, Master Ren picked up a single golden leaf. He held it carefully in his hands. Then he asked, "Taro, why do leaves fall?" The young monk smiled. "Because the season changes." The old monk nodded. "And do the trees mourn every leaf?" Taro looked toward the towering branches overhead. "No." "Do they cling to them?" "No." The old monk smiled softly. "Why not?" Taro considered the question, then answered quietly, "Because they trust new leaves will come." Master Ren nodded. The garden became silent once more. Only the whisper of leaves moving through the wind remained. The old monk looked toward the trees. Many people suffer because they try to hold on to seasons that have already ended. The words drifted gently through the afternoon air. Taro listened. Master Ren continued. They hold on to old mistakes, old regrets, old conversations, old versions of themselves. The old monk released the leaf. The breeze carried it away. It is natural to remember. It is natural to learn. but it is not necessary to carry everything forever. The words settled deeply within Taro, because there had been many things he had carried, embarrassing moments, failures, decisions he wished he had made differently, conversations he wished he could repeat. For years he had replayed them, again and again, as though revisiting them might somehow change the past, but the past remained unchanged. Just as autumn remained autumn, no amount of wishing could turn falling leaves back into spring blossoms. Master Wren looked upward. More leaves drifted through the sunlight. Their descent was slow, graceful, beautiful. Nature teaches release everywhere, the old monk said softly. The trees release their leaves. The day releases its light. The river releases every drop of water. The clouds release their rain. The breeze passed gently through the branches. Perhaps we are meant to release things too. The garden seemed to grow even quieter, as though every tree already understood, as though every falling leaf carried the same message. Let go, let go, let go. Taro closed his eyes. For a moment, memories appeared. Old mistakes, old fears, old worries, things he had carried for far too long. He imagined each one becoming a leaf, golden, light, weightless. Then he imagined the wind lifting them, carrying them away, not because they were unimportant, not because they never happened, but because their time had passed. Their lesson had been learned, their season had ended, and perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself sitting in that same garden. The air is cool and peaceful. Golden leaves drift gently from the trees. Sunlight filters through the branches. The ground beneath you is soft, comfortable, safe. Notice your breathing, slow, steady, natural. With each exhale, imagine releasing something you no longer need. A regret, a worry, an old memory, a burden. Watch it become a leaf. Then watch the wind carry it away, farther and farther, until it disappears among the trees. Another leaf drifts downward, then another, each one taking something unnecessary with it, something heavy, something old, something finished. You do not need to carry yesterday into tonight. You do not need to solve the past before you rest. You do not need to revisit every mistake. The leaves have already shown the way. Release, rest, trust. Feel your body growing heavier, more relaxed, more comfortable. The muscles in your shoulders soften. The muscles around your eyes soften. Even your thoughts begin to slow, like leaves drifting toward the earth. The garden remains peaceful. The trees remain calm. The autumn breeze moves gently through the valley. Everything knows how to let go. Everything knows how to rest. As the afternoon slowly faded into evening, the garden became filled with golden light. The trees glowed. The leaves shimmered. The entire valley seemed wrapped in warmth and peace. Taro remained beneath the maple tree until the first stars appeared overhead, watching the leaves, watching the fading light, watching another season unfold exactly as it should, without resistance, without fear, without regret. And somewhere deep within his heart, he felt another burden quietly fall away, like a leaf released from a branch, like a lantern drifting down a river, like an echo fading among distant mountains. The night arrived softly. The stars appeared one by one. The garden settled into silence, and all around him, the trees continued their gentle practice of letting go, trusting the seasons. trusting the future, trusting that what needed to come would come, and what needed to leave would leave, just as it always had, just as it always would. Winter announced its arrival in the gentlest possible way, not with storms, not with fierce winds, not with sudden cold, but with silence, a deeper silence than the valley had known before. The mornings arrived, wrapped in pale silver light. The forest stood still beneath the quiet sky. The river flowed more slowly now, its song softer, its voice gentler, and each evening, the air carried a faint promise of snow. The monks noticed it. The birds noticed it. Even the trees seemed to notice. Everything felt as though it were waiting, patiently, quietly, peacefully. One evening, shortly after sunset, Taro stepped outside the temple. The sky was covered by soft clouds. The stars hid behind them. The moon glowed faintly through the grey veil overhead. The valley felt suspended between seasons, between autumn and winter, between movement and rest. The air was cold against his cheeks, yet comforting, refreshing. He stood quietly near the garden, listening, breathing, waiting. Then he saw it. A single snowflake, drifting downward through the darkness. Small, delicate, almost weightless. It landed softly upon a stone. Moments later, another followed, then another, and another. Soon the entire valley was filled with falling snow. Not heavy snow, not fast snow. Gentle snow, silent snow. Snow that seemed less like weather and more like a dream. Taro watched in wonder. Each snowflake moved differently. Each followed its own path. Some drifted left, some drifted right. Some spun slowly through the air. Others floated almost motionless. Yet all of them eventually reached the earth. Without effort, without urgency, without fear. The temple roof slowly turned white. The garden paths softened beneath a thin blanket of snow. The trees gathered delicate layers upon their branches. The entire valley seemed transformed. Everything appeared quieter now, softer, gentler. Even the darkness seemed peaceful. Taro wandered toward the cedar tree, where he had spent so many evenings. The old tree stood quietly beneath the snowfall, ancient, patient, unmoved. He sat beneath its branches and watched the snow descend through the night. The world seemed impossibly still, as though time itself had slowed, as though every sound had been wrapped in cotton. The snowfall continued, steady, gentle, endless. After some time, Master Ren appeared beside him. The old monk carried no lantern. None was needed. The snow reflected enough light to illuminate the landscape softly. Together, they sat beneath the cedar tree, watching, listening, breathing. The snowfall became their conversation. The silence became their teacher. Neither spoke for a very long time. There was nothing to explain, nothing to discuss, only the quiet beauty of winter arriving. Finally, Master Ren whispered, "Listen." Taro closed his eyes. At first, he heard nothing. Then he understood. The old monk was not asking him to hear a sound. He was asking him to hear the absence of sound, the stillness, the quiet, the peace hidden beneath everything. The snowfall continued, soft, endless. The old monk smiled. Snow teaches something important. His voice was barely louder than the breeze. Taro listened. It never hurries. It never struggles. It never asks where it should fall. The snow drifted through the darkness around them. each flake arriving exactly where it was meant to arrive. The old monk continued. It simply lets go. The words floated through the winter air, like snowflakes themselves. Light, gentle, simple. Taro watched a single flake land upon his sleeve. For a moment, it remained perfect, then slowly disappeared, returning to water, returning to the earth, returning to the endless cycle of life. Nothing forced, nothing resisted, everything unfolding naturally. The realization filled him with warmth, even in the cold night, because for so long he had believed peace required effort, control, discipline, solutions. Yet everywhere he looked, nature taught the opposite. The river flowed naturally, the leaves fell naturally, the stars shone naturally, the snow fell naturally, and perhaps peace arrived naturally too, when given space, when given trust, when allowed. The snowfall deepened. The valley grew quieter still. The temple windows glowed warmly in the distance, golden squares of light against the silver landscape. The sight felt comforting, like home, like safety, like rest. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself sitting beneath that ancient cedar tree. The snowfall drifts gently around you. The air is cool but comfortable. The world is silent, peaceful, still. Snowflakes descend from the night sky, one by one, slowly, softly, effortlessly. Watch them float downward. There is no hurry, no destination, only movement, only stillness, only peace. Notice your breathing. Slow, gentle, natural. Imagine each breath becoming softer than the one before. Each exhale releasing tension. Each inhale inviting calm. The snowfall continues, endlessly, gracefully, like thoughts drifting through the mind. Some appear, some disappear. None need to be chased. None need to be stopped. Simply allow them to fall. Allow them to settle. Allow them to dissolve into silence. Feel your body growing heavier now, more relaxed, more comfortable. Your shoulders soften completely. Your arms rest effortlessly. Your legs feel warm and heavy. Even the small muscles around your eyes begin to relax. The snowfall covers the valley, the rooftops, the trees, the paths. Everything becomes quieter. Everything becomes softer. Everything becomes still. Imagine that the snow is gently covering every worry, every unfinished task, every concern, every fear, one by one, until all that remains is calm. All that remains is peace. All that remains is rest. The world grows quieter. The night grows deeper. The snowfall continues. Slowly, softly, endlessly. Back beneath the cedar tree, Taro felt his eyelids becoming heavy. The snow, the silence, the gentle rhythm of his breathing. Everything seemed to invite sleep. Not force it. Not demand it. Simply welcome it. Like a warm light in the distance. Like a comfortable bed after a long journey. Like home. The old monk sat quietly beside him. The valley slept beneath its blanket of white. The mountains disappeared behind falling snow. The river moved silently through the darkness. And above it all, winter continued its patient arrival. Snowflake by snowflake, moment by moment, breath by breath. The night deepened, the silence deepened, the stillness deepened, and somewhere beyond thought, beyond effort, beyond awareness. Sleep drifted closer, soft as snowfall, gentle as moonlight, quiet as the valley itself, waiting, patiently, peacefully, ready to carry every tired traveler into dreams. Winter settled completely over the valley. The snow that had begun so gently continued through the night. Not heavy, not fierce. Only soft, only quiet, only endless. By morning the rooftops of the temple were white. The paths were white. The hills were white. The forests were white. The entire valley seemed transformed into a world of silence. Days passed, then weeks. The season deepened. The river flowed beneath delicate sheets of ice. The trees stood patiently beneath blankets of snow. The mountains glowed silver beneath the winter sky. And through it all, the valley remained peaceful, resting, breathing, sleeping. Taro noticed something beautiful. Winter did not feel empty. It felt restful. The trees were not dead. They were resting. The gardens were not forgotten. They were resting. The mountains were not lonely. They were resting. Nature understood something that many people had forgotten. Rest was not weakness. Rest was wisdom. The entire valley seemed to know this secret. Each tree, each stone, each snow-covered rooftop. Everything moved more slowly now. Everything invited stillness. Everything welcomed sleep. One evening, after the final meal of the day, Taro wandered through the temple grounds. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the darkness. Lanterns glowed softly beside the pathways. Their golden light reflected upon the snow. The air was cold, yet peaceful, the kind of cold that encourages blankets. Warm tea, quiet evenings, the kind of cold that invites rest. Taro crossed the courtyard, past the sleeping gardens, walked beside the frozen stream. Everywhere he looked, the valley seemed asleep. The birds slept, the animals slept, the trees slept. Even the wind seemed to whisper more softly. The world had slowed. The world had softened. The world had surrendered itself to winter. Eventually, Taro climbed the small hill overlooking the temple. The same hill where he had once sat beneath the stars. The same hill where he had learned to trust uncertainty. The snow crunched softly beneath his feet. The sky above was clear. Countless stars shimmered overhead, brilliant, silent, timeless. The moon hung low above the mountains. Its silver light bathed the valley below. Everything glowed. The rooftops, the forests, the fields, the river. The entire landscape looked as though it belonged to a dream. Taro sat upon the hillside, wrapped in a warm cloak, breathing slowly, listening, watching. Nothing demanded his attention. Nothing needed solving. Nothing needed fixing. The world seemed complete exactly as it was. For a long time, he simply sat there. The stars above, the snow below, the silence around him, the breath within him, all moving together, all resting together, all existing together, without effort, without resistance, without hurry. And perhaps now, as you listen to this story, you can imagine yourself there too, upon that quiet hillside. Looking out across the sleeping valley, the air is cool and calm. The night is peaceful. The sky is filled with stars. The snow reflects moonlight softly across the landscape. Everything feels safe. Everything feels still. Everything feels exactly as it should. Take a slow breath, and another. Notice how little is required of you right now. Nothing needs to be accomplished. Nothing needs to be understood. Nothing needs to be decided. The day is finished. The work is finished. The questions can wait. The future can wait. Tomorrow can wait. For now, there is only rest, only stillness, only peace. Imagine the entire valley breathing with you, the forests breathing slowly, the mountains breathing slowly, the river breathing slowly, the snow-covered fields breathing slowly, everything rising, everything falling, together, one gentle rhythm, one gentle movement, one endless feeling of calm. Feel your body becoming heavier, the muscles in your legs relaxing completely, the muscles in your arms softening, the muscles in your shoulders releasing, your jaw relaxed, your forehead smooth, your eyelids heavy, comfortably heavy. The night grows deeper. The valley grows quieter. The stars continue shining overhead, patiently, silently. The moon continues its journey across the sky. Without effort, without hurry, everything knows exactly what to do. And perhaps you do not need to do anything at all. Perhaps tonight your only task is to rest, to simply rest. Imagine yourself lying now in a warm room within the temple, a soft blanket resting over you, the sounds of winter outside, gentle, distant, comforting, the faint whisper of wind, the occasional drift of snow against the roof. Nothing more, only peaceful sounds, only peaceful silence. The lantern beside your bed glows softly, golden, warm, steady. Its light creates gentle shadows across the wooden walls. Safe shadows, quiet shadows, the kind that belong only to peaceful places. Your breathing slows even more, in and out, in and out, slow, easy, natural. You no longer need to carry the stones. You no longer need to chase certainty. You no longer need to answer every echo. You no longer need to open every door. You no longer need to rush across every bridge. You no longer need to resist the wind, or hold on to fallen leaves, or follow every lantern downstream. The lessons have already been learned. The journey has already been taken. Now there is only rest, only peace, only sleep. Outside, the valley continues sleeping beneath its blanket of snow. The cedar tree sleeps. The bamboo grove sleeps. The river sleeps within its movement. The mountains sleep beneath the stars. The temple sleeps. The gardens sleep. The pathways sleep. Everything rests. Everything trusts the night. Everything surrenders to stillness. And somewhere deep within that vast and peaceful silence, Taro closes his eyes, not because he is tired, but because the night is inviting, because the world is quiet, because rest feels natural, because sleep arrives exactly when it is welcomed, not forced, not chased, not demanded, welcomed, like a friend returning home, like moonlight touching still water, like snow settling upon the earth. Slowly, softly, effortlessly, the stars continue shining, the moon continues glowing, the valley continues dreaming, and now there is nothing left to do, nothing left to carry, nothing left to solve, only this breath, only this moment, only this peaceful darkness. The night grows deeper, the silence grows softer, the world drifts farther away, and sleep, gentle, patient, certain, finally carries the sleeping valley into dreams, and carries you with it, into stillness, into quiet, into rest, into sleep. Good night.